Christmas 1995, Alan Holmes went missing, but he never left his flat. For 10 days, he was tied to his own bed, tortured, and left to die in the middle of London. Neighbours heard nothing. The bustling streets below were oblivious to his screams. By the time police forced their way inside, it was too late. Despite DNA evidence, CCTV footage, and multiple arrests, no one has ever been held accountable. This is the story of a kind, gentle man whose life ended in unimaginable cruelty, and a crime that still haunts investigators decades later. Welcome to Crimes That Haunt Us. We release a new case every Sunday at 6 p.m, so hit subscribe and don't miss the next one. And let me know your thoughts on this case in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. The unsolved murder of Alan Holmes stands as one of the most sadistic and perplexing cold cases in modern London history, often described as one of the cruelest crimes ever to feature on BBC's Crimewatch UK. The crime occurred over the Christmas holidays of 1995 when Holmes, a 53-year-old civilian police mechanic, became the victim of a burglary that escalated into prolonged torture and neglect in his isolated Camden flat. Tied down to his bed for nearly 10 days, Holmes endured dehydration, circulatory failure, and psychological torment before dying on January 5, 1996. Despite his affiliation with the Metropolitan Police, which prompted an unusually intensive investigation, the case remains unsolved after nearly 30 years, with no convictions secured despite 5 arrests, DNA evidence, and annual media appeals. Holmes's death occurred in one of London's busiest districts, Camden Town, yet went unnoticed for days, demonstrating how even in densely populated urban areas, individuals can suffer in complete invisibility amid the holiday bustle. The contrast between the city's Christmas cheer and the hidden cruelty inflicted upon Holmes underscores broader themes of disconnection in urban life. Alan Holmes was born in Londonderry in 1942. He grew up in a conservative environment and pursued higher education, studying law at Queen's University, Belfast, though he did not complete his degree. He relocated to London in 1964, seeking new opportunities amid the UK's evolving social landscape. By 1979, Holmes had established a stable role as a civilian motor mechanic and garage hand for the Metropolitan Police at Kentish Town Police Station, ironically located on Holmes Road. There, he maintained patrol cars and vans for 17 years. Colleagues remembered him as a big, gentle guy that would never hurt a fly, reliable, unassuming, and well-liked, with no known enemies or criminal ties. He was always cheerful and loved to tell a joke. Holmes weighed around 16 stone, and his physical robustness may have contributed to his prolonged survival during the ordeal that would ultimately claim his life. Holmes led a quiet, solitary life, but was gregarious with a wide circle of friends. Kathy Horgan, a close friend with whom he spent his last Christmas, described him as one of the nicest, friendliest blokes you could ever have met. His sister Mavis also described him as friendly, gentle, very kind, and would have given you the shirt off his back, noting his compassion for the homeless. She said Holmes might offer money for soup or a blanket, but would never invite strangers in his home. Holmes resided alone in the only occupied flat on the 2nd floor at Parkway above a disused shop in a mostly vacant building slated for redevelopment where he had lived for 30 years. The isolation of his flat amplified the horror of the crime. Holmes also suffered from multiple sclerosis, which may have limited his ability to resist his attackers. Holmes's building was a run-down block with him as the sole remaining tenant, adjacent to the Odeon Cinema. Its emptiness meant that no neighbours could hear screams, and the building's insecurity left it vulnerable to burglaries. On Christmas Day 1995, a burglary occurred at Cullen's convenience store, a now-defunct chain, located approximately 50 yards from Holmes's flat. At around 11:15 p.m., police responded with a helicopter and thermal imaging. One offender was apprehended inside the store, but a second male accomplice fled, eluding arrest. This raises questions about a possible connection to the fatal burglary of Holmes's apartment, given the close proximity and timing. Some suggest that the fleeing perpetrator may have entered the derelict block of apartments and ultimately Holmes's flat. The area's holiday quietude and lack of widespread CCTV at the time allowed the perpetrators to operate undetected. The Metropolitan Police investigated 3 other Christmas-period burglaries within 300 meters of Parkway, including one on Delancey Street, all involving similar door-forcing tools. While these were ultimately not proven related, the pattern hints at a possible mini-cluster of Camden burglaries in late 1995, potentially indicative of a local offender familiar with the area. Earlier that evening on Christmas Day, Holmes spent the day with friends Kathy Horgan and her husband in Isleworth, West London. They shared a meal, exchanged gifts, and celebrated the festivities. At around midnight, Holmes was then dropped off at his Parkway flat. This would be the last confirmed sighting of him unharmed. Into the early hours on Boxing Day, Holmes had fallen asleep in his clothes on a sofa. The intruders entered his apartment shortly after midnight. There were no signs of forced entry, suggesting either entry via a door or window, or that the perpetrators may have followed Holmes inside. Holmes was confronted, kicked, and tortured to reveal the pins for his 2 NatWest cards. He was then bound hand and foot, tied face down to his bed while fully dressed. The offenders then left the flat and relocked the door using Holmes's own key, which was missing. Police observed that the front door had been relocked from the outside, indicating a calm, methodical offender who staged a clean exit. The burglars stole 2 bank cards, his driving license, passport, and 2 Victorian silver picture frames, 4 by 5 inches, which had belonged to his family for generations. Meanwhile, a passerby or security guard at the nearby Odeon Cinema would later report hearing a single shout or thud on the night of December 25th to 26th, but initially dismissed it as holiday noise. No alarms were raised. At 6:50 a.m. on Boxing Day, at Lloyd's Bank on Camden High Street, money is withdrawn from Holmes's account using his card and PIN. Between the 26th and the 27th of December, the cards were used or attempted to be used approximately 12 times at ATMs in Oxford Circus and the South Bank near Waterloo, withdrawing roughly £1,000. Some reports note that the first successful withdrawals occurred within hours of the assault. At 5:50 p.m. on the 27th of December, CCTV captures a black male suspect, aged approximately 22 to 25, 6 foot 1 inches tall, athletic build with a number 2 haircut and wearing a grey hoodie, blue jeans and Timberland boots, attempting to withdraw money from Holmes's account. A witness in the queue behind him described the suspect as calm, taking several minutes attempting withdrawals and appearing unfazed. Meanwhile, back in the Parkway flat, the horrific ordeal played out between the 26th of December to the 4th of January. Holmes remained immobilized for approximately 9 to 10 days. Bound face down to his bed, he endured severe agony. The bindings cut circulation to his hands and feet, causing swelling, pressure sores, and tissue damage. He had been kicked and tortured to extract his bank pins, while his screams echoed unheard in the empty building. Dehydration ravaged his body, leaving dry mouth, cracked lips, organ strain, and a delirious haze that blurred the line between despair and hallucination. Holmes endured unimaginable suffering during this period. The gentle giant with multiple sclerosis remained tightly bound face down to his bed for nearly 10 days. Paradoxically, Holmes's robust physical frame prolonged his suffering, leaving him in a state of painful limbo. Police investigators believe that the perpetrators returned at least once during this period to provide water to Mr. Holmes. This conclusion stems from the fact that survival beyond 3 to 4 days without hydration would have been impossible. Evidence included a cup or jug found moved or refilled near his bed. Holmes's landline was present, visible in reconstruction images just above the bed, yet he could not reach it. Each time the phone rang, he was helpless. December 29th, Holmes's sister Susan attempted to call him, but received no answer. At the time, she did not grow concerned, noting that it was not unusual for Holmes to be out of the house or busy with work. She would later recall, "The thought of him lying there unable to answer the phone will haunt me for the rest of my life." January 2nd, 1996, colleagues at Kentish Town Police Station became concerned when Holmes failed to report to work after the holiday period, behavior uncharacteristic of the reliable employee. The following day, on January 3rd, Alan's colleagues then visited his flat and knocked several times but found no response. By this point, Holmes was likely far too weak to call out and be heard. January 4th, the police then decided to force entry by smashing the front door, and they discovered Holmes alive but in critical condition. He provided a confused, dying declaration, stating that he had been tied up since Boxing Day by intruders who tortured him with violence to extract his bank pins. He claimed that one of the perpetrators had returned at some point. Holmes was immediately rushed to University College London Hospital. The following day, January 5th, at 11 a.m., Alan Holmes succumbs to his injuries. The autopsy revealed a harrowing sequence of physiological failures stemming from prolonged immobilization. The primary cause of death was deep vein thrombosis from blood clots in his legs caused by restricted blood flow from the bindings. Circulation was completely cut off to his hands and feet, causing severe tissue damage, swelling, numbness, and pressure sores across his limbs. Secondary factors included acute dehydration with organ strain and dry mucous membranes exacerbating delirium and weakness. Non-fatal assault injuries, such as bruising from kicks to the body, were noted. While his multiple sclerosis may have limited his ability to resist the attackers, the examination confirmed that his death was the result of prolonged sadistic neglect, with no other underlying medical conditions contributing significantly. On January 12, 1996, detectives announced that they had arrested 2 men in their mid-20s at an address in Kentish Town in connection with the case. But ultimately, both of these men would later be released without charges. From January to March 1996, 3 additional arrests were made, bringing the total to 5 individuals questioned in relation to Holmes's murder. All were released without charges due to insufficient evidence. Police continued door-to-door inquiries in Camden and analysed poor-quality CCTV footage from the ATM withdrawals, but no substantial leads emerged. The investigation focused on tracing the stolen Victorian silver picture frame and Holmes's passport with appeals for sightings in local pawnshops, but these efforts too were fruitless. On February 29th, the BBC's Crimewatch UK aired a detailed reconstruction of the crime, including Holmes's last Christmas day with friends, the burglary, and ATM footage of the suspect, described as the athletic black male in Timberland boots. Hosted by Nick Ross, the episode generated approximately 50 calls from viewers but yielded no actionable leads. A follow-up episode later in the year reported stalled progress. And from mid-1996 onward, the case began to grow cold as immediate investigative avenues were exhausted. Police maintained it as an open inquiry, conducting periodic reviews, though public updates were minimal. Family members, including sisters Mavis and Susan, expressed frustration over the lack of progress. In 2006, a DNA breakthrough emerged. DNA evidence from the crime scene, collected from the bindings and other items within the flat, were re-examined using advanced techniques. A full DNA profile of one of the offenders was generated and entered into the UK National DNA Database. but unfortunately it returned with no matches. A second partial DNA profile from another individual suggested a possible multi-offender scenario, but again no matches could be found. This re-examination was part of a broader cold case initiative championed by DCI John Yates, who referenced the Holmes case in discussions regarding funding for more forensic reviews. On December 31, 2010, on the 15th anniversary of Holmes's death, the Metropolitan Police and the BBC issued a renewed appeal for information, emphasizing the horrendous nature of the crime and urging anyone with knowledge, particularly regarding the stolen silver frame, to come forward. DCI John Alden stated, "Those responsible have never been held to account. I hope they now feel that they can come forward." On January 2016, marking the 20th anniversary, multiple articles appeared in local papers, including the Islington Tribune and Camden New Journal, recounting the case and criticizing perceived police inaction post-1996. Friend Kathy Horgan spoke publicly, describing Holmes as so lovable and expressing concern that the case would fade from public memory. A room at Kentish Town Police Station was named in his honor around this time. Despite one of the Metropolitan Police's most exhaustive investigations of the 1990s, the murder of Alan Holmes remains a cold case, frozen by the absence of new physical or testimonial evidence. Detectives have revisited the file multiple times, most notably in 2006 with DNA reanalysis and through periodic anniversary appeals, but each effort has stalled at the same impasse. A complete genetic profile with no match, grainy CCTV beyond enhancement, and no fresh witnesses. With the key suspects now middle-aged and potential informants scattered or deceased, the inquiry has reached a standstill where only an unforeseen confession, technological breakthrough, or conscience-driven tip could reignite momentum. Alan Holmes's life, marked by kindness, generosity, and quiet resilience, should not be defined solely by the horrific circumstances of his death. Remembered by friends, family, and colleagues as a gentle, compassionate man, he touched the lives of many through small acts of humanity, from sharing a joke to offering help to those in need. Decades on, his case remains unsolved, yet his memory endures, not as a victim of violence, but as a person who embodied warmth, decency, and integrity. In honoring Alan Holmes, we recognize not only the tragedy of his loss, but also the enduring impact of a life lived with quiet courage and compassion. Thanks for watching and listening to Alan's story. Please feel free to add your own thoughts, comments, and theories down below, and we'll see you next time.